All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. It is the end of May, and I'm going to share my screen to switch to a presentation. Can you all see that? Okay, great. So here is tonight's agenda. And so we can do a quick call to order. Daniel, are you all good to take minutes?
Yeah, I have the side by side. Thank you.
Sweet. Okay, so I'll just do a roll call. Daniel?
Not here.
Violetta is not here. Sochi? I saw her. That counts. That counts. All right. So she's here. And then Dr. Plunkett is not here, but we'll watch out for her. And then Rachel's here as well. Okay. We're going to skip item number 3 because we're going to look at April meeting minutes next time, just so we all have a chance to look over them. And approval of agenda. Should we do a vote of 3, do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Why not? All right. Roll call for approving the agenda.
You'll make the motion, I'll second it, and then we just roll
There we
call.
go. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
And now we do roll call. So Daniel.
Yes.
Sochi.
Yes.
And Rachel is also a yes. Okay. So all that done. I thought we could do something new so I can try out how to do annotation on Zoom. So you should have a top bar just to introduce ourselves to each other. And if you want to annotate on Zoom, you don't have to, but just you can select annotate at the top and then you have like a stamp function. And you can place a stamp on your favorite tree. I think we did favorite flower last time, and now the trees are done blooming and flowering. So I thought we could do trees that I saw. Amazing. It looks totally different on my screen, so they're just going everywhere, but that's fine.
Wait, how do you do this?
So on Zoom, this is good practice because I'm going to try to use this next week. So the top bar in your Zoom, you should see it says new share or like screen sharing or something, participants. There's a button that says annotate. And if you press that, it'll give you like a little toolbar. If not, let me know.
No, I'm just feeling old. I'll get it. I'll figure it out.
So Daniel has already annotated. Who else has annotated?
I did. I put a star.
You put a star on the Japanese maple.
Good.
Okay, great. Okay. For everyone else, oh, I just put an X. All right. Sarah, there you got it. You got it. Okay, great. Roberto put it on the Japanese maple. Amazing. Okay, cool. Well, I think we all know each other pretty well. But yeah, thanks for coming again. I'm gonna exit out of this annotation and move on to the next slide. Ooh. Oh, I see it now. Oh, thank you, Amy. Okay, wait, let me see the chat. Is there anyone? Oh, she can't do it on her phone. Sorry, Sochi. She likes the crab apple. Amazing. Okay. So the first item on the agenda after those introductions was to talk about student workload at Jones. And I can't see y'all. Okay, there we go. And so I linked in this presentation, and I'll link it in the chat. Maybe. the letter to the LSC that kind of restarted this conversation. It's not a new conversation, but I just wanted to bring it up in this committee. And so, yeah, I thought this could be a space to talk about the state of student work at Jones. And so if you want to share, now would be a good time. And I just included a couple of points that I thought maybe could be part of this conversation. Um, First being the Eagle Day Anonymous feedback form for teachers who violate the Stress-Free Wednesdays policy. I'm not sure if that's in the works or has been rolled out yet, but I know we talked about that a couple of meetings ago. And then another point that I wanted to bring up that Miss Logan actually pointed out to me today was that there was a homework focus group among students and teachers and parents a couple of years ago. And so I was just wondering if that's some data that we can pull to look at so that we're not, starting over from scratch. And Mr. Mitchell's here. That is really good timing, actually. Let me see if I can. Hi, Mr. Mitchell. Connecting to audio. Um, Hello, Mr. Mitchell. Good to see you.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about you?
Not bad.
We were just talking about the first of the two main agenda items for this evening, which is student workload at Jones. And I was actually just to kind of start us off talking about Miss Logan actually reached out to me earlier today and mentioned that there was a homework focus group from a couple of years ago. And I was wondering if that data is something that we might be able to look at. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. And I just want to hear from people in the meeting. If you want to share.
Okay, right now I'll just listen.
Wait, so did you ask about like the student workload at Jones Rachel? Oh, sorry, Miss Marisa.
Go ahead, Daniel. You're good.
Well, I was gonna say I think the student workload at Jones is pretty manageable, especially because we have a 8A B-day schedule. I know it gives like one extra day for students to do the work, and especially this year with that C-day is really useful. I think the C-day introduces its own issues, like with the teachers not listening and sometimes introducing new stuff. But I think that survey or the reporting system that Mr. Mitchell mentioned a few meetings ago would be useful. But other than that, I think it's manageable. I mean, sometimes it's get out of hand, but if there's resources out there, like the counselors are really helpful a lot. And if you reach out to teachers, like a majority of the time, they're understanding.
Cool. Ellen, do you want to?
Yeah, for sure. The only reason I did this one is you were asking about the feedback form, like that was sent to students. So there was one sent at the end of February to students. I'm not sure if it was sent directly to students. I know that Mr. Mitchell emailed teachers to ask us to put it on our Google Classrooms. So a link that kids students could click and follow up. And so I know that did happen. I feel like I forget at which meeting. I think Denaya shared that data though with the LSC. Or maybe this committee. I think it was the LSC as a whole though. But I can't remember when the survey closed or which month that was. But this was from the end of February.
I'm sorry, Ellen, were you asking me about that data or?
Oh no, I was just saying that you had to send this at the end of February, and I believe Denaya had shared that data at the LSC a couple months ago, but I just couldn't remember exactly when.
Was that the SGA survey results? Okay. So I think this may be separate from that, which is that there was a feedback form that we were thinking about, which would kind of tie into the results of that from students saying there wasn't that they would like one, just to be able to anonymously, if a teacher gives out homework, for example, on a day they're not supposed to anonymously. So I was just kind of like putting that bullet point in there to see if that's something that, well, students still want, or if it's already it exists already. But Amy, I know that you've had your hand up.
I thought I was responding to what I thought we were discussing, which is the letter that the student wrote in about their workload. Sorry, I'm calling you from the basement now. Are we talking about the feedback form or the student workload letter?
Yeah, I think I was just trying to tie those together because it is just one student's experience, but I did want to, you know, kind of broaden it out.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out, you know, that that letter was really concerning to me, obviously. And, you know, on the one hand, I really get, like, we don't want the school to be a pressure cooker on students who, you know, are feeling, you know, like they have too much to do, too much work is put on them. But then, you know, there's some discussion at the bigger LSE meetings about making sure, you know, that everyone gets a stab at, you know, elite level college education. And so those two things are kind of conflicting, you know. So I just wanted to point out the two ends of the spectrum, you know, or the two elements of what we want to make sure everyone feels like they're getting a workload that they can manage. But we also want to encourage everybody who can, you know, to reach for, you know, as much as they can, you know. So I do think it's important that if there are students that feel, as this student did, you know, really incapacitated by it, we, you know, just it's important to find some way to respond to them and help them.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, I hear that kind of like those two things kind of made me in tension with one another. And I just wanted to Trinity's question in the chat. Yeah, so thank you, Trinity, and also hi. I don't know if well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's y'all are thinking the same thing. Well, I guess I'll just add, so maybe now is the time to pull in this point about the homework focus groups, Mr. Mitchell. Is that something, because I mean, I think it's one student's letter, one experience, but then, you know, there may also be information from this focus group that could be looked at.
I'll have to follow up with Dr. Powers. I remember him leading, you know, that particular focus group. I don't know, you know, what quantitative data that was used. I know obviously there would be some discussion or, you know, some information from those discussions, but I don't know how readily available, you know, it would be. But if there is some data to add to that discussion, but I mean, student workload, one is a relative term, and it is something that we have discussed. And you know, I think if we're looking at ways to address it, you know, when it occurs, versus trying to maybe create some sort of policies on the front end, because to the point that was just made about, you know, writing that fine line of, you know, overworking students and then preparing them for what college has in store for them kind of thing. It varies from class to class, varies from teacher to teacher. But I think what should be addressed is when a student feels like there's this workload overload, how do we, you know, best address it? From a school policy perspective, you know, we've instituted no homework, you know, holidays and things of this nature. And through the pandemic, we tried to create situations where we could minimize the amount of workload for students. Now, whether or not, you know, that happened at all times is obviously the conversation. And then kind of tying in what Trinity just mentioned in terms of the student incident form might be a good way for students to be able to, you know, get that information out for, you know, a good way to tell that information to school leadership, and then we could address it in a more formal way. or I should say a more intentional, specific way, as opposed to creating more large scale policies if it's just a more one or two teacher related issue.
And what you just said, Mr. Mitchell, is making me think that this issue seems to be wrapped up in something larger than any one particular school. Like these students are being asked to, or feel maybe pressure to apply to and get GPAs that will allow them to go to, really exceptional schools or just reach for the stars and all of this. And that's not necessarily, if the curriculum is kind of trying to set them up to do that, that's not necessarily like the school's fault per se. It's like a selective enrollment. I mean, I went to a selective enrollment school and I definitely think there was a lot of workload, but I don't know if I would place that on like the school, and more so just like the larger, need to like stand out and get like a really, really good GPA just to get into like into a good school. So I just want to say that because this is like it's tough. And Daniel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I completely agree with what you were saying. Like, I don't think, because Jones, I think, does its best to try and manage its workload. I know, like, from the policy side, they have the, like, no homework holiday policy, which is honestly a godsend sometimes, or most of the time, especially over the summer, except with APs, but, those are college level classes. So, of course, you're going to have, like, an exception. But I think that, if anything, because there is a culture, especially at a select enrollment school like Jones, which is number 3 in the city, that you need to like go to one of the high-end colleges. I think that something that Jones can do is attack that culture. I remember freshman year and sophomore year, we had speakers come in the auditorium and talk about a number of things. I think if we could try and get like a speaker to talk about that kind of culture and why it's negative, I think that's interesting and students might attend it. Even a virtual one. I know the college essay guy is something going on right now, and it's something for college readiness for sophomores, for juniors. So something like that, having an external person come and speak, I think can help like show students that it's not good grades aren't all that matters, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Mr. Mitchell, I know you have your hand up, and then Sochi.
Yeah, kind of in line with what Daniel was saying. Yeah, there is the culture, and from a school perspective, that is something that we can begin to reimagine. You can have a college preparatory culture without some of the stresses that come with it. So everybody feels the need to take AP level courses for that rigor and for the potential credit that they can get in college, but there are no guidelines that say how many APs you should take, and then that increases the student workload, right? So if a student chooses to take or feels compelled to take 3 or 4, or in some instances 5 APs, that is going to be a significant workload for that particular student. So now, no matter how much a teacher tries to adjust how much they give, a student chooses to pick that many. And we don't have anything from a policy standpoint that says that a child can't, because we try not to gatekeep. But if we kind of reiterated from a culture standpoint that the idea is for to encourage the learning as opposed to the competitive nature of it, and getting for that A and everything for all those APs, that is something that we can discuss. And actually, and Ella might be able to chime in a little bit, we started to kind of have that conversation a little bit earlier this week.
I do want to just Trinity's comment in the chat. I know one of my teachers used an anonymous feedback form for students to let them know if they did something in class or in their teaching that was harmful in any way. Could this be a way for students to let their teachers know when things are too much? And can teachers be required to provide those anonymous forms at the beginning of every year? And are there non-homework tactics that teachers can be prepared to employ to reduce student stress in these events? It's a good question. But Sochi, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. I think I want to make 2 comments. I think first, I didn't attend like a selective enrollment school. I think my experience might be a bit different. But I think, regardless, like all schools, like you still had like the environment of the competition. So I do understand, like, maybe like some students do feel overwhelmed. And so like I know students do have the choice to pile on how many AP courses they want, but then I also feel like I mean sometimes maybe like folks are doing it just to like make sure they get ahead of the game. Like I know I also took some college credit courses and AP courses because I wanted to save money. I think college was like super scary and expensive, and I wanted to like do everything that I can. But I also think like it does come at the cost of like um, you burning out. But I'm just wondering, like, um, what if any like resources Jones makes available to its students? I know for like my high school, we used to do in the library. I mean, I know everything's changed because of remote, but I don't know if there's opportunities for students to have spaces like meet with their teachers if they need that additional one-on-one instruction outside of class. I know when I was a student, if I wanted to work on an assignment or get extra help, like, teachers say, meet us after class or meet us before class, but just wondering if that's something that's being offered like remotely or what's currently being offered remotely to help with students like stress and the workload.
Ellen, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. I can help answer some of those questions, Sochi. And then also, I think, Mr. Mitchell, you were referring to our professional development yesterday with some of those like broad scale cultural traits that we're seeing negatively impact student health here. So I'll try to tackle some of both, but definitely won't completely. So Sochi, you're absolutely right that space and time for students to be able to like ask for help outside of class is essential. I think in a remote setting, it's a little bit more challenging. There's something a little bit more formal about like clicking a Google Meet link to join rather than like walking into a room when you could also just casually walk out and maybe not even be noticed, right? Like there's a definite like difference in terms of feeling self-conscious, I think. And I haven't like surveyed my students to ask them this, but it's a sense that I have sometimes when I go to meetings. And so I want to recognize that it's probably there. So it's not quite the same level of informal that we're used to and that we really like treasure at Jones. Like the academic lab period is amazing at Jones, like having the opportunity to like pop into different rooms, work in study groups. Like I usually have like a Calc BC group in my room just because there are problems that it's due, I don't teach that class, but like they're there because that space and that time is afforded them. In a remote setting, that time is afforded them. It's a little bit more challenging to have an analogous space, but I do appreciate that like we prioritize maintaining that time. And I think some teachers have gotten creative with like more chat type of office hours because there's a little bit less like activation energy to engage that way. Before and after school, again, are a little bit weird. They're kind of lost in some ways in a remote or a hybrid setting. I think, so that's a really great point. I know that I have not formally like been available as much before and after school as I usually am. Usually I'm like kind of living in the building. And it's different because I'm not leaving a Google Meet open at 7 in the morning. I do know some colleagues that have done that, and I have not, but I should have probably done more of that this year. And then, so hopefully that helps answer that question. And then Mr. Mitchell was referring to part of the professional development series that we've been doing throughout this year. We started last Wednesday to really explore the traits of white supremacy culture, and then also how they're evident in a school environment and often supported and perpetuated by a school setting. And specifically at Jones, there's a lot of like perfectionism was one of the ones that was really highlighted and brought up a lot. This idea that like you have to take all of these extraordinarily challenging classes and get straight A's in all of them as you're applying to all of these colleges and probably doing 3 or 4 extracurriculars. So that's something that I think is a work in progress for us as a school culture to like unwrap and dismantle, right? I think that, so I really appreciate that our facilitator has been bringing that up in the past couple of weeks to like encourage that process. Because I think the first step is like to recognize that it's there, right? Like to not just say like, nah, it's fine, whatever, it's a challenging curriculum. Like it is, it totally is. But at what point are we missing the point, I guess, kind of like that challenge should be for a purpose, as Mr. Mitchell was saying, like with the learning purpose. Anyway, there's a lot wrapped up in there. So I think that's what you were referring to, Mr. Mitchell. So.
Yeah, Ellen, just kind of reaffirming the fact that like it's just kind of ironic that we were just talking about some of the negative impact that the AP culture can have, and we now have an opportunity to begin kind of chipping away at that and kind of rethinking how we teach AP, how we embrace that AP culture, how we promote it to students, so that they can feel supported to get through some of the levels of rigor that are involved in all of that, and maybe change the culture around a little bit so they don't feel so compelled to do as many of them. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you for following up on that, Ellen.
Thank you. And Dr. Plunkett, did you want to go?
Yeah. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. I was having trouble connecting my phone and I'm in my car. So that's why my camera is not on. But I just want to, having been at Jones for the last 9 years, the pressure some students feel as it relates to the workload of AP classes and even in our honors curriculum is, it is stressful for some. And there is that whole competitive nature. And I've spoken to many students over the years and they'll say, well, I'm okay with not getting the straight A's. Like I'm okay with it. But when I say I'm okay with it, I'm looked down upon, right? And when we talk about like the culture of AP, and this is some of the work we're doing with our equal opportunity schools as well. And, I know I was a little late, but I'm sure Mr. Mitchell, may have mentioned that as well. But, so when we think about AP, and I know a lot of people say, oh, well, AP is so that you can go to college and graduate a year early, right? But I think there's also another opportunity that kind of gets lost in the translation. As many of you know, before I came to Jones, I was a math teacher and I taught AP calculus and I taught it at a neighborhood school and a lot of students, they struggled, but I said, it's okay to be in here and it's okay to struggle because part of the AP experience is about having that experience so that you're prepared for a college level experience when you get to college, even if you don't get the credit. And I think sometimes because of the selective enrollment culture, teachers even feel the pressure to, well, I have to have so many of my students get, these high marks, otherwise I'm going to be thought of as not doing a good job, when that's not necessarily the case. We have to really start thinking about, the purpose of AP and the College Board is exposure to college level material so that students, yes, it's great if you learn it and master it well enough to, place out of it and get the credit for college. That's amazing. But I think we forget about there's just so many other benefits of taking an AP class and having that, just the experience of the rigor, right? And I know, workload is difficult. Jones students aren't the only people who feel this pressure. High school students across the city feel it at different high schools as well. And I just think we have to kind of change. It is a culture thing because so many people feel, like I've talked to parents. I mean, parents are involved in this as well. Well, I know my kid has to take 3 AP classes junior year and 3 AP classes senior years, or else they're not going to get into college. And I mean, I don't believe that's true. I really don't believe that's true. It might make you a little more competitive and everyone wants to be competitive. But for me, I think that we need to put the culture down. It is like, you want to take what you can handle and really experience have a positive learning experience, right? Because what I'm finding with a lot of the students that I talk to regularly is they're not even concerned so much about the learning anymore. It's just the grade. So they're not actually invested in the learning. They're invested in getting a good grade, but sometimes the two things are not the same, right? Learning the content and getting a good grade are not always the same thing. You can learn something for a test and a year later, you don't even know you ever took it. So I just want to say that, kind of to echo what Ms. Martinsek and Mr. Mitchell said about, the culture of AP and how that does affect the workload.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned the equal opportunity schools, and I just wanted to kind of like lift that up too, because I was looking through the report. Roberto actually sent it to me for Jones, and I thought that one of the most striking things about the report was that students reported, I think it was like the number one reason why students at Jones were surveyed were taking an AP was to get college credit. But like staff members said the number one reason to take APs was to get the experience of the rigor. And I thought that discrepancy was really interesting because maybe there's a chance for staff to connect with students on why are you taking this class, because I think when you're 17 or 18 or even 16 looking ahead, maybe the question of like, oh, I really want this experience is not necessarily, and you're just like, how do I get out of college fastest and how do I get college to be the cheapest in particular? So yeah, I don't know. I thought I was just like thinking about that. And I don't know. I don't want to, I know that we're kind of getting closer to, just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, we should keep this conversation going. And Daniel, you mentioned like bringing someone to talk about culture. We should talk about that or something. I don't know, or just keep talking about this. But I do want to move on, if that's okay, from this topic. There's one. Yeah, I'll send it. I'll send it to you, Daniel, for sure. So for the second half of the meeting, I thought I would give some updates. Daniel and I could give because Daniel's been planning this. The updates to the Jones Student Safety Forum, which is going to be next Wednesday at 6 p.m. It's going to be virtual. And so I just kind of wanted to recap. I met with the CPS Chief of Safety and Security, Jadine Chow, on Monday. And then just before this call, I was on a LSC member and informational session with Jadine Chow about the whole school safety plan process, which was really informative. I got some answers that I answered the questions that I had. And so we can talk about those. But I just wanted to kind of, we don't have to read through all of this, but this is just kind of like an overview of what whole school safety plan CPS's vision was. And I talked about this 2 meetings ago or 1 meeting ago, I think, but just kind of, it started in January of this year to work with community engagement or community organizations, and they facilitated 18 engagement sessions. That's a wrong number, it was not 10. And then for the whole school safety committees at every CPS high school that voted to retain their SROs last summer to meet in April and May. And the Jones whole school safety committee met last night. I had to leave early, but it was a really good conversation. Daniel was there, Mr. Mitchell was there. And so then this is the timeline and kind of give you an idea of where we're at. And so in June, sometime in June, Chief Chow said definitely by July 14th, we need to, the LSC needs to vote on the whole school safety plan. And so I thought, this is something that CPS has shared. So I thought I would just kind of like basically be a microphone for what CPS is trying to say with this process. And so what is whole school safety? CPS is envisioning it as a a combination of physical safety, emotional safety, and relational trust. And so crucially, I think one of the things that they got from the feedback sessions with community organizations that is that whole school safety is not necessarily or not solely physical safety, and it's a complex and composite thing. And I think this kind of illustrates that. And so when whole school safety committees are putting together a plan, they're using a template and that we looked at last night, Mr. Mitchell, Daniel, and I, and the other members of the committee, that will allow the committee to fill in a vision statement for whole school safety. That's kind of workshopped amongst the committee, and then using the current state assessment of school safety strengths and opportunities. It's like a long-winded way of saying what's happening that's good in terms of safety at the school, and where could we improve. And so for that template, to fill it in, the data, I guess, like the meat of the template or the plan is gonna come from engagement sessions, or this is what CPS is asking committees to do. And so, for example, next Wednesday, there's going to be a safety forum for students. In addition, though, there's other things that committees can do, including looking at relevant school data, and soliciting other forms of feedback from the school community. That can be surveys, that can be focus groups, that can be one-on-one outreach model. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe. I probably would not be the best for that. But so that's what's going in to the plan. And then what that plan is trying to get to is what you see on the left here, which is a part of the plan is a recommendation for SRO programs. Yes, that's true, Daniel. We also have the old SRO survey. Very true. And I think like any data that we deem relevant, maybe as a committee could like go into how we consider or what we put into the plan, including the old survey data, including what's been shared at the old safety committee, or not old, but just the former safety committee, and then this safety committee as well. But basically, school committees will have three options. They can recommend to the LSC that they end the SRO program completely. They can recommend that the LSC votes to keep one school resource officer, and they can also recommend that they keep both. And that is going to be tied to some money. So if a school recommends to the LSC to remove one or both SROs, they'll get $50,000 annually for every SRO that they terminate from their safety plan. And those funds can be used, for example, for alternative safety programs, including, this was an example that Chief Chow brought up tonight, is a full-time restorative justice coordinator at a school. But there's also a lot of other options available. And something that I asked Chief Chow on Monday was, just frankly, can you give us more options? Because I think that people need to know what options are available to them if you're going to give them this like figure. And so that's something that's like an ongoing conversation, I hope. But I know, yeah, I think a lot of people have that question was asked in the meeting tonight. So I think a lot of LSC members are kind of wondering, what are we going to do with this money? That's a lot of money. And yeah, we don't want to just, so the last summer, there was no money involved. It was just you either keep the program and everything stays the same, or you end the program and you don't get anything. And CPS it was not well received. And so now they're trying to give options, which I think is good. And so I thought I had another slide in here, but I don't. But this is also, does anyone have any questions? I've just kind of like run through this really quickly. Or does anyone want to add something, Mr. Mitchell, Daniel, that I did just totally did not even include?
No, you did a great job summarizing and just kind of where we are right now. Just to reiterate, we did have an initial meeting yesterday where we did look at the template. And so we're starting to populate some of that information. after you left, Rachel, some of the next steps we determined were we were trying to pull together, actually pull some of the questions from the template and convert that into some level of a survey. I was ambitious, thinking that I could probably get some of that done for today. That's not going to happen, but that's one of our next steps, is to create a survey that we would push out to students, staff, and the community as a whole. So similar language, but to those three entities, and collect that data to start filling in kind of where people are and what they want in terms of safety. And from a leadership perspective, for school leadership to fill in kind of the priority or goal elements, that therefore the committee can have a more richer conversation. So those are our two next steps. And then we're concurrently collecting data. So we have the student forum, next week. And I believe we're scheduled to meet next Thursday. Is that right, Daniel? Is that what we agreed upon? Next Thursday at the same time? Yeah, next Thursday at the same time to kind of touch base on where we are, and maybe discuss some of the data that we've collected, and review or solidify some more elements of the template.
Thanks for that. And Dr. Ponce, I think, go ahead.
I had a question. That was really helpful information. And they mentioned like the money that, if you don't have an SRO, you'll get $50,000 for each SRO. And, they said that's per year. I'm just curious if that is ongoing and how long that is ongoing, right? Did they say for the next 5 years? Did they say for the coming year? Like, did they specify that and clarify that? Because I just from my my experience with CPS when I was at a different school, I mean, I was a teacher, and I know that they did give an option. They said, "Oh yeah, we'll give you the money," but the money was not guaranteed every year. And that was it was under a different administration. It was a long time ago, but I just want to make sure that they gave some type of clarity on this, that, so if you get $100,000 for next year, let's say, will that $100,000 be there to sustain whatever work we start doing with that money?
That's a really good question. That's the question. It does. I had the same question. And Chief Chow told me on Monday, and she also said in the meeting, it is annual. And in fact, a LSU member asked in the chat, is CPS trying to move away from SROs in schools, like as a district? And there wasn't a clear answer really given on that, but I think the answer is kind of an implicit yes. And so, and I say that because if a school LSC votes to end its SRO program, CPS is basically saying, and Chief Chow said this, it's not really an option to bring them back. That's kind of, once you vote them to be removed, they are at your safety plan with some, she said there's always exceptions, but I think that's the general. So yeah, that I think it is going to be an annual, right now, annual amount. And I know Ellen, you had your hand up, and then Daniel, and then Roberto, I think is the order.
Yeah, I had a really short question. Has CPS given any guidance or template for the survey that you're describing? Because it sounds like it's a different survey than the SRO survey, because it's addressing all the different aspects of CPS.
That's a question. That's a really good question. I wanted to ask that, but I needed to leave to get on this call. But I'm going to reach out to Chief Chow and ask if there's something. I also don't know, maybe Mr. Mitchell, you've gotten word about that?
No, I did not get word. That is a great question. We can review we're not going to use the survey that was given previously, because our approach is our own, and if need be, obviously getting some clearance on some of the questions that we're asking. But because this is our school specific plan, I think as long as the survey is consistent amongst the people that were the various stakeholders, we should be fine.
Cool. And Daniel, did you want to?
Oh yeah, just touching upon that, like what Mr. Mitchell was saying about the old survey, just because that was like a while ago and a lot of people had issues with this, so I think it would be hard to use that again because it was like flawed at the beginning. And also I was under the impression that it was SROs or nothing without the money, so that's a thing. And also it's 50,000 per SRO yearly. But I think Dr. Plunkett also asked like for how long will that money come in yearly? Because I think that's an important thing as well, because if it's only like 5 consecutive years, what's after that? I think that's something that should be asked as well. Also, we mentioned this a little bit at the end, Rachel, after you left the meeting yesterday, with the recommendation that whole safety committee gives. If we do get rid of one SRO, like who chooses? And so I don't know, we asked that question and we were like assuming, but I think if either
Really
Rachel,
good question.
Mr. like can reach out to someone, I think that would be good.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
yeah, Daniel, and I just because of, you know, my experience with CPS over the years, I don't like, and I just don't want us to find ourselves in a hole, like putting, you know, I just don't want us to put some great like school safety plan in place using this $100,000 or $50,000, whatever it is, and then end up being like, oh my goodness, we now a couple of years later we can't fund this. So I just want to make sure like that we just have clarity around how we can make everything sustainable for us. And then another comment I wanted to make, you know, if there is some template for a survey, I think that would be great. But I also think it's going to be very important that whatever survey we use, we don't necessarily just use a boilerplate survey, because we have to make sure the survey addresses the needs and the context of our specific school. As you know, we all know every school is different. Every school has its own issues, its own personality. I mean, there are commonalities across all schools, but there are also very much individual places. So we just want to make sure whatever survey we give, you know, that the questions are designed to get information from within the context of our school, if that makes sense. So yeah, and I appreciate all the effort and time everyone has put into gathering all this information, because there's just so much out there, and you know, getting the exact answer and the clear answer is really important.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Dr. Plunkett. Roberto, did you want to go?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Rachel. So I want to address something. There was a question about, you know, if CPS is moving away from SROs. So I've had several conversations with Jay Dean, and I've attended the various community engagement sessions around the SRO and the whole school safety plan. And it is that's what CPS is moving towards, right? They're taking a very holistic approach towards having police officers, uniformed police officers in schools, right? Because research has shown that it does have a detrimental impact on students' social emotional well-being, and in particular, our students of color. So that is the direction that the district is going. And I have two questions, just so that everybody we're all on the same terminology. And Rachel, and this is a question for you. Could you explain for the community the difference between an SRO and the Jones security team, and how many individuals are on the Jones security team? And then as far as the survey, I would encourage this committee and the administrative leadership team to harness the Davis Square, the representatives of Davis Square, and the equal opportunity schools to design that survey, right? To ensure that we're not that we're not missing out on some implicit bias. So I would say use them so that you can create a very a developed and thoughtful survey.
Thanks for that, Roberto. So yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer to how many security staff Jones has. Maybe an admin has the answer to that.
We have 9 security team members
9
that
security.
are, yes, we have 9 security team members that are spaced out over the course of Jones's full school day. So from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., we have security available in the building.
That's good to know. Yeah, so this is the difference between, and this is from JD and Chow's April 9th presentation. And so the one crucial point, I think the difference between school resource officers and CPS security officers, like the 9 that are working at Jones, is that security officers undergo school-specific training programs, including sex abuse prevention, LGBTQ policies, implicit bias, safety care. But the school resource officers do not undergo school-specific training. This was brought up last summer to the district when there was conversation about whether the district was going to make a sweeping decision about SROs or not, and the training was kind of emphasized. But then speaking to other differences, SROs are armed and uniformed officers that are employed by Chicago Police Department. And Jones is going to have 2 SROs that are going to be new as of, or were new as of 2020. And then CPS security officers are not employed by the Chicago Police Department. And they are, as of 2 years ago, they're vetted by the Office of Safety and Security and not by each individual school, which is a recent change. So I hope that clarifies. That's a question that comes up a lot because I don't think that's a distinction. That's an important distinction. And so coming back to this. So yeah, I mean, basically what I just wanted to say is that next Wednesday is going to be the first of hopefully several attempts at engaging the Jones community. And it's going to be a student forum. And there's a registration link, and I can put that in the chat also. If you want to register for it. And I don't know, Daniel, do you want to go over the forum? I talked so much. Do you want to go over the forum structure or the town hall structure?
Yeah, I can go for it. So we're kind of breaking this into three parts. The first part is going to be like a check-in, to see like if students feel safe like sharing their ideas, as well as to have students share some ideas to make the breakout rooms that will occur later on feel safer, as well as see like how much they know, or what they know or what they want to know. And then that's going to be a short piece at the beginning. And then majority of the beginning of part 1 will be a presentation that's made by Rachel and others like Trinity, and help from another, the peer conference at Jones. They're also working with that. So it's just going to be like, what's the difference between SROs and security officers, like Rachel just said, a timeline of how we got here, as well as some other like common information that should be known before heading into a conversation such as this. And then part 2 is going to be a section where student testimonials and statements are going to be read. We have a few clubs lined up that are going to submit some letters, or people who are going to read out letters either by a facilitator or themselves, just to have like kind of ammunition later on for students to bounce back off if they're kind of like unsure, as well as just get some like information out there as well. And then the meat of the part of the whole town hall will be part 3, which are small group discussions, which are going to be student led, because this forum is really a student forum, a place for students to feel comfortable. And they're just going to be in breakout rooms talking about their own opinions and what they want to see from a school safety plan, or what they think about SROs or potential alternatives and stuff like that. So there is no like right choice to these, because it's all student opinions, what they want, what they wish was in Jones. So we're hoping to get a large number of students, just to have a wide variety of opinions. We've already sent out the flyer, as well as like a sign up form. So we're going to be blasting that throughout the week until Wednesday, so we can see how many students are actually interested in this. But yeah,
Yeah, Daniel, that's summed it up. I don't know if there's any questions about the forum or any suggestions.
Hi, Rachel. I have a quick question.
Sure.
I was just wondering, I know it's this form, like we're trying to make it like the student space only, and so I was just wondering, should me and Violeta be there at the forum, or should we just, I don't want to be taking up space, and I wasn't planning on speaking either, but I just want to know is um, is there should we be present? If not, totally under, I do want students to feel comfortable to share their thoughts and opinions about this. So I just wanted to check in on that.
I don't want to answer that. Daniel and Trinity, do y'all want to answer that one? Or you don't have to, but.
I mean, oh, sorry, you can go through.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear anything that Rachel had said. If you're cool speaking again, I think my Wi-Fi is a little fuzzy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, for sure. I just, I don't want to answer that question because I feel like Daniel and Trinity should answer it.
Oh, sorry, I thought Trinity spoke. I think at the moment, I think it wouldn't hurt to be in the, because I think it'd probably not be smart to be in the breakout rooms with the students, especially because I think that might break a few CPS protocols. But I think in the section where students are reading out their testimonials, I don't see an issue because being part of the LSC, you guys have some clearance already. So I think you can be there when students are reading out testimonials, but not in a small breakout groups. We're trying to come up with a plan for the breakout groups, and they're all involved. They all involve being student led, like it says on the presentation there. So I don't see an issue with you coming to like the beginning portions.
We're also trying to, well, I need to get clearance on this, but recording the session, or at least part of the session, so that if there aren't, especially for LSC members, I think, because this is kind of to inform not just them, but also, it'd be cool if that were, but that's something that I think needs to be an agreement that the students are asked and at the beginning of and so I don't know, that's a question that's been on my mind today, actually.
Rachel, yeah, we definitely need to get clearance for that, because the forum, just to record it, like a forum is not like an LSC meeting. Doesn't fall under the Open Meetings Act or anything like that. And especially because some of the students who are in there may be minors, you may have to get like their parents' permission. I know there's even sometimes issues like recording, Google Meets, whatever. So, yeah, I think I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm saying we really want to make sure we look into that so that we don't break any protocols or have any issues later on.
That's a good idea. I'll look into that for sure tomorrow. And Trinity saying, yeah, that's a really good idea, Trinity. I was wondering if at the end of the student forum, we can have each small group present some final thoughts to the entire group to show some finalized student feedback for the LSC to use. And so we can take notes instead of recording maybe. Yeah, that sounds really good. And kind of goes around the recording issue.
Yeah. And also, Rachel, I think students may not be as open if something's being recorded, but you know what I'm saying? Like they just might feel more free to speak their mind if knowing that something's not being recorded. I just want to make sure we get really good, honest feedback, and I don't want something like that to, hinder the possibility of getting good, positive information from the students.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And on that note, I did want to ask, because this is something that I asked Daniel and Trinity, in terms of this part 2, which is testimonials and statements. I think Daniel and Trinity both have said, and I agree, that having, Joan security staff perspective on this is important to include. And so I'm wondering, I guess maybe this is like an offline conversation, but I'm wondering who to reach out to solicit that if someone from the security team wants to provide some sort of perspective that maybe a student could read at the event, just so that that's part of the conversation. I don't want to exclude that perspective. That was an open-ended question. I don't know if it was directed towards someone, but Mr. Harris is the head of, okay.
I did actually. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I did reach out to the security team because they were invited to be a part of the actual planning committee. So they do have a seat at the table that can be heard in this process. I believe Steve Golson will be president moving forward or working with the committee. So outside of the forum, so if they don't have an opportunity to maybe voice their opinion at the forum, they do have a seat at the table and can be.
That's good to know. Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So there's just a few minutes left. And so does anyone have any other questions about the safety forum, the whole school safety planning process, or anything else that was brought up? I don't know if these are old hands, Roberto and Sochi. I'm assuming they are.
There, I apologize.
No worries. We can also end early. So if there's no other comments or questions, just if you could share this registration link with students so we have a good idea of how many people are going to attend so that we can plan better. And yeah, really looking forward to it. And this is the last slide. So thank you, everyone, for coming today and sharing. Oh, I don't want to miss anyone in the chat. And thanks, Daniel, for all your work, and Trinity. Okay, I'm gonna say goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Good night,
you,
everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Dr. Plum. All right.